Okay, we're almost live. Ladies and gentlemen, just checking that the stream's working. Just bear with me, making sure that all the connections and things are hooking up nicely. I'd hate to miss any comments and any questions coming in because they come in thick and fast, and I don't want to miss out on anything there. So bear with us a moment, and we'll just make sure all the streams are working. Very special stream tonight. Very special guest. Really looking forward to tonight. There's no other way to say that. Looks like we are live on that stream, so that's working. That's good news. And just check the other one here. Hey, it's working. We're live. Yes, you are live. It's working. Nick, Glenn, Matt, everyone who's tuning in, thank you so much. Great to have you all online. Thank you all for tuning in. Tonight is a very special night where I've got the opportunity to have an informal chat, a catch-up with the senior brand ambassador for Highland Park Distillery, Martin Markvardsen. Please welcome to the stream. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. When I can't go to Australia, this is the best we can do. And, I miss Australia. So, and I miss you, Matt. So it's good to see you here.
Miss fantastic. You too. Yeah. I think last time we caught up, it was a late night restaurant somewhere in Melbourne. It was the last late night trip. Yeah.
I guess you're right. Something tells me, I can't remember, but something tells me you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was some French restaurant. It was the only one open on the strip, and we were there with some of the Spirits platform team and some of the Vintech team, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. Yeah. So the first question that's come through from Glenn, actually, which I was about to ask you, is, are you in Orkney? But that is incorrect. You are actually in Denmark. Tell us whereabouts.
Yeah. Well, I'm living in Denmark now, and it's about an hour and a half drive south of Copenhagen. So a place called Marielyst, which is a beach area, and this is where I live with my girlfriend, and where I spend my time to relax when I'm not traveling. So beautiful place, countryside, but during summer it changed to a place for lots of tourists. It's a summer house area, but it's alive and kicking, and it's still quite a relaxed place to be during summer. But in the winter, nothing at all. It's just dark and relaxing. So it's a good place to kind of get your head off all the travels and prepare for the next travel I do when we're allowed to travel. So it's a perfect place to be.
And if we can just talk topically just for a second before we dig into some of the meatier stuff, how does the restrictions look in Denmark at the moment? How's it going there?
Yeah, well, it started to ease up. We Monday this week we opened up bars and restaurants again, of course with a few restrictions. Schools are back, and there's still restrictions about how many people getting together in publics. I think it's 10 people right now. But on the 8th of June, they will open a bit more up. I think gyms and boxing clubs and whatever that I use will slowly open up as well. So it's not too bad. We open up the borders to Germany probably as well. So we're getting there, and we locked down quite quickly. So we have been pretty safe here, I would say. So we didn't get the kind of situation they had in Italy, Spain, and Sweden actually. And
most of the UK is in quite a bit of lockdown as well. So it's
yeah. So but it's it's what it is. But we get the best out of it, and sitting here doing things like this is a different way to work, but it's good. It's good, and it's enjoyable. So.
And as someone who travels as much as you do, it must be actually almost nice to have a tiny bit of, like you say, a little bit of downtime, a little bit of sort of time with family, a bit of rest as well.
Yeah. Well, it's if you have to see the positive thing, much more time with your family, get the chance to do some things. When you own a house, there's always things to do. But I also think it gives us a time to reflect on what we have done for the last couple of years, work-wise with Highland Park. What we send out, is there things we can do differently? So there's, I think, looking in what we are doing now and why we're not working and all these kind of things, or why we're not traveling. We have to see the positive things, and one of the positive things is to sit back and reflect on what we can do differently, and so on. Because when everything is up to speed, and yourself, we just go out there, and it's the same, the whole company, and one day take the other, and we just push out things and so on. And is that the right way to do it? Maybe not. Maybe it is, but it's time to sit back and relax, and what can we do different?
Yeah, amazing. And it was one of the questions that came through here, which is quite interesting, which is probably related to what we've just been talking about as well. What is from your perspective, what does the Denmark whiskey scene look like? So for someone who's never even been or doesn't know it at all, what does that look like?
Well, it's not too bad, to be honest. There's a lot of whiskey clubs, and we have a pretty good whiskey fair as well going on in Denmark. A really good whiskey fair, actually. Lots of interest for whiskey. It's an open market as compared to Sweden, Norway, and Finland. In Scandinavia, that's a closed market, a monopoly market, and it's going pretty well. There's not a big, there's not a big whiskey scene in bars and restaurants and so on, but at home and in whiskey clubs, it's a big thing, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Now you've written a lot about whiskey. You've talked a lot about it. You've presented on it, and you've got probably one of the most devoted, or you're probably the most devoted Orkney ambassador, and for Highland Park I've ever known, which is incredible. What I'm really interested to ask and really dig into a bit here is finding out some of the early side of your journey. Where did this all come from? Because if you read your bio, it's sort of you've been interested in boxing and weightlifting and all sorts of things, and it seems quite full on. And then it's like, so how did it get to where you are now? Give us some of the backstory here.
Yeah, well, it's it's a bit of a coincidence, to be honest, because I started when I was 19, 20 years old in the Danish Navy, and became part of the Danish military police in the Navy. And we went on an exercise to Scotland, and we had a day off, and where everyone else, they went on pub crawl, I wanted to go out and see some castles and so on. And eventually I actually popped into a distillery, and that kind of blew me away. And that was what I really fell for was not the whiskey. It was okay, but I didn't drink whiskey at all at that time, so it was quite a new thing for me. But it was the passion the people that worked at the distillery had, and I kind of said, well, I need to know much more about this. And this is 32 years ago, and whiskey books there was a Michael Jackson book probably, and a few others. So if I wanted to read about it, and we didn't have internet like today, so I could just look up things. So after a few months reading about it, I thought, well, if I need to know much more about this, I have to go to Scotland. And I did. I took some time off, went over.
Not an unfamiliar pilgrimage for many people. Like it's one that many people take in their whiskey journey. The going to Scotland really changes everything for them.
But I when I went back to Scotland, it was not to visit a lot of distilleries. I wanted to work at the distillery. I wanted to see what it was to do the floor malting. I wanted to see these kind of things. So I eventually popped into Bowmore and did some work with Jim McEwen.
Very cool.
And it blew me away. And then I started doing tastings. So actually,
we're talking pre-2001. If it's with Jim, then aren't we?
Yeah. It was at Bowmore, so it was before he came to Brigadic. So and Jim taught me everything about floor malting. He taught me everything about cask selection and these kind of things. And probably one of the biggest mentors I had, or the biggest mentor I have. Later on, I started doing tasting. This year is the 30th year for my first whiskey tasting, and needed to do more. So it just took to go. But again, there was no way I could have a full-time job in Denmark at that time until there was a position for me at the World of Whiskey in Copenhagen.
Yep.
At the airport. and I took that position. I started working full time with whiskey, and then later opened up a whiskey shop in Copenhagen together with a few others. And I got the chance later to come to Craigellachie Hotel near Macallan to work as a whiskey manager at the world famous hotel there.
Mm.
And then in 2015, I was approached by Edrington Group that owns Highland Park, and they asked me, do you want to be an ambassador for us? And it was kind of, I felt like an 18-year-old boy asked to play for Barcelona with Messi. And that was pretty, yes, so it was at that time, and people that know me from back then knew that Highland Park was my favorite whiskey. So I can't remember how many times I had whiskey of the week, which was Highland Park in different expressions.
Yeah.
So just to be able to work with Highland Park, and I remember it was a guy called Stuart McRae that called me and said, "Do you want to work?" And I said, "Can I work with Highland Park?" "Yeah." "Can I work with Highland Park 18? "Of course you can." And I didn't ask about salary or anything. It's just, "Can I work with Highland Park 18? "Yeah."
Like the 18-year-old Highland Park.
Yeah. So that was kind of the start for the whole thing. And then a few years back, I was still doing both Macallan and Highland Park for years. But then a few years back, I was asked to become global ambassador and senior brand ambassador. And senior just means I'm old, as you know. So, but I'm global as well. So it's quite a different way to get into it. But as you said yourself, a lot of whiskey enthusiasts started their passion just by visiting Scotland, and that's how it started. Passion for Scotland, and later passion for whiskey.
I think, like many people, when I think of Highland Park, I instantly recognize it with your face and your presentation now as well, which is something you want as an ambassador, of course.
Yeah. Well, there's things about it. I'm actually very, very dedicated to what I'm doing, and I simply love Orkney. I simply love Highland Park, and today I'm kind of a face of Highland Park, and it's always to find a balance that, if I go to markets like some markets in Asia, I'm they look at one, and it's not only me, but a lot of people in the industry, but they look at you as a superstar.
Yeah,
and it's to find the balance that you are definitely not more important than the whiskey. That's whiskey is always what we have to put in first line, whether the brand we're working for, what it is. But it's to find that balance, and I think if you have a brand that do a lot of things and always put out the best we can, then it's no problem, because then the whiskey will always talk for itself. So but it's always a balance, and with your popularity in Australia, you need to find that balance as well, because people get to know us and they associate with the brand, and it's one thing that it's good, but it could also be bad, because we need the whiskey to talk.
Yeah. There's some great questions coming through, which I'll just jump to now before I get on to the next part of our interview. There's one from David Phillips that I want to ask, but I'm going to ask Martin Eber's question first, who asks, and I don't know if you may have met Martin Eber from Time for Whiskey. He says, last time we spoke to you, you were telling me about your crazy travel schedule, which no doubt has been curbed in recent months. How have you spent the lockdown, and how do you think the whiskey industry, and especially the role of an ambassador, will change post-lockdown? That second part, Martin, we sort of spoke about this earlier, about how there's always something to do. Martin's been doing a lot of these live streams and a lot of virtual tastings for different markets as a global ambassador. But I think that second part of his question is quite interesting. So, how do you think the whiskey industry, and specifically the role of an ambassador, will change post-lockdown?
Well, first of all, hi, Martin. Thank you for the question. Well, I think the future will change for ambassadors. I'm normally traveling around 200 days a year, sometimes a little bit more, but around 200 days a year. And I think when all this is over, when the whole world is up and we start traveling again, we will do less travel. because what we have been doing the last couple of months with lots of live streams, videos, and these kind of things, it will take over a bit more. And I think about 20 to 30% in the future will probably be like what we're doing now in presentation and so on, which is okay. It can be quite stressful to travel a lot, but of course, at whiskey fairs and some trainings and so on, you need to be there in person. And I wouldn't miss that at all. I love travel. I love being there. I love to see people's faces, see the reactions. But for smaller events and education wise, I think this is something we can use for the future and something we can learn of. And it works pretty well. We I think we adapt to the situation, and I see this becoming a part of what we're doing in the future for all ambassadors, especially as you and I talked about earlier, Matt. If you have to travel for almost a day or two to do a tastings for 4 or 5 people, is it worth it? Could we do it like this? It will save time, it will save money, but it will always, I like to be in front of people, even if it's 2 people or if it's 1,000 people. But it will save us. As I say, it could be exhausting to travel, and especially if it's for 2 or 3 people or 5 people. Could we do this, save that, and spend the time different? And so I think time will change, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it'll change a lot of how we. I think this is almost like there was a good question I was asked recently about that same thing, Martin. About once lockdowns are over, once COVID is a thing of the past, will virtual tastings also be a thing of the past? And I said I don't think so. I think there's an opportunity here for us to learn from this format and adapt it. If it would probably be reduced, but it'd be certainly be adaptable for other purposes. Quite a few people saying they're enjoying some 4 dot something here in the stream, which is always good. Some SMWS 4 dot, which I couldn't tell you what distillery that is, but it's probably tasty whiskey from somewhere in Orkney. There's a great question from Dave Phillips here saying, I'm intrigued about the relationship between Highland Park and Scarpa, both historically and the present day. That might lead into a bit of a question about sort of the history of Orkney, which you're quite well versed in as well. I mean, that sort of history of the land and the place and time and people. But is there anything you want to comment on that history there, that relationship?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, if you look back, it's a very small community on Orkney. Even though we have about 22,000 people living there, it is a small community, and it's always been a place where people helps each other. And when it comes to if you go all the way back, the Vikings came up about the year 800 and settled down, and looking at the community in Orkney, it's a little bit different than the rest of Scotland. Everyone in Scotland are friendly, but if you come to Orkney, they are a little bit more friendly, and there's a huge heritage from the Scandinavian people and so on, and all these things together, that people see each other every day and so on, makes a difference on Orkney. And when it comes to the relationship of Scarpa and Highland Park, it's always been good. Back in some years back, when we closed down from the summer period to clean the distillery and so on, we sent people over to produce for Scarpa, so they didn't have to send people up from the mainland and so on. So we produced for them during our lockdown during summer, and kept that going. And still today, we are helping each other. If we have a breakdown in the wash bags or mash tuns or whatever it can be, we go and help each other. And it's still good. We send people back and forward, visitors, take them more to Scarpa, Scarpa take people over to us, and have a really, really good relationship. So, and I don't think it's only with Scarpa, it's the whole whiskey community. I think we're pretty good to help each other.
Yeah.
Looking at distilleries today, and especially I think ambassadors and distillery managers as well, looking at helping each other as much as they can. it's to do with Scotch whiskey, and of course we want to do our best for our own brand, but we also want to do good for Scotch whiskey. So I think
I mean, what's good for your brand is good for the industry as a whole.
Yeah. You know, if Highland Park is doing well, or Macallan is doing well, or Glendronach, or whatever it can be, you know, the Scotch whiskey industry is doing well, so we can, you know, we can rely on that, and it's a good thing, you know, to have that. And I think if we talk about competition, I think the biggest competition in the whiskey industry will probably be between marketeers, who can come up with the best kind of new marketing gimmick or whatever it can be. But to be honest, I think, and you know yourself as well, you know, when we go to whiskey fairs and gatherings and so on, we're one big family. We don't look at which distillery are you from? Are you from Scotch Whiskey Malt or Scotch Malt Whiskey Society? And so, no, we're one big family, and we're all friends, and we share ideas, and we share best practice and so on. So I think it's a great industry to be part of, and wouldn't miss it for the world. It's absolutely amazing.
For those who missed the first half of this, and there's a lot more people tuning in, I'm live tonight with Martin Markvardsen from who is the global senior brand ambassador, whichever title we want to go with. But we'll go with global because it makes him feel younger. But it's the global brand ambassador for Highland Park, not senior, and he's joining us tonight with a chat about Highland Park, about his story. We're going to dig a bit more into the distillery as well in a moment. Here's a question and comment from Alex Darlenberg, who says, firstly, hi, Martin. Mjolnir, Sydney misses you. You've traveled the world for years and seen so much. What has been one of your true magical moments that sticks out in your memory?
Oh, that must be the visit to Mjolnir and Alex. That stands out.
No, I'd actually believe you if you said that. It's a fantastic venue. I just thought that was such a planted answer.
Yeah, no, but I you know, that said, I must say, you know, when I met Alex and when I came down to Mjolnir, I was blown away, and it's definitely a place I need to go back to. Absolutely amazing. But you know, as well, I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here with you guys, but Australia was a huge thing for me. I always wanted to go down to Australia and see that, and that was amazing. And the fun thing was, when I was in Australia, when I had to go back from Australia to Europe, I had to go up to Svalbard, which is the Arctic Circle, North Pole. So it was from one end to the other, and it was amazing. And that's another place I always look at as something very, very special. To go to a place where there's 3,000 people living from, I think it's 32 different nations, and there's nothing, and you can't go outside the door without a shotgun because there's so many polar bears there and so on. So
yeah, wow,
different kind of place, and I've been there twice as well, and it's unique. But I feel quite privileged to be able to go the places I go, and looking back, you know, when I'm retired and sitting back, Australia will always be one of the parts of the world that I look back to and say, well, that was amazing. Great people, must say, great people. Scenery is unique. So I'm not just saying that because Alex asked the questions and I'm here.
No. I was just winding her up because that's just too easy. But Alex,
no.
True.
But I think, and Alex knows that I got a really soft spot for Mjolnir. It was absolutely amazing, and it's a place that will always stay in my mind, definitely.
Yeah, and great spot to have some Highland Park.
Yeah.
There's a question here from Nick Husek who says that two of his favorite core ranges of Highland Park are the 18-year-old, which is an absolutely ripper whiskey, and Dark Origins.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for Highland Park 12 Sherry or any other exciting whiskey in the works that you can possibly leak to us now? I'm not asking for any trade secrets here, but any projects in the work that might be down the path with Highland Park?
Yeah, well, it's good you're asking, because there are a few things coming up. The core range will continue as it is. We have the 10, 12, 18. We have 21, which will now be in different batches. So there's an August 19 and November 19 batch that will come out. We relaunched the 25 in kind of a new setup as well, new casks, and the 30, 40 as well. And we're working on extend the core range with a few other things, and it might be that there will be one stronger coming out very soon as part of the core range. We see lots of core ranges from other brands have cask strength. It might be something like that will come out, but we are, and that's what we're talking about. This period of time, gave us time to talk about what can we do, what will be there. So we are talking about different things, and there will be a few things for the core range, and not special editions, but core range that will be launched within, let's say, the next year or two. So there's something to look forward to. I don't think we will change the 10 and 12 and 18 right now, but you never know. We have to look into the core range, as we always do. But right now we are quite happy with what we have. I think both the 10 and the 12 are doing exactly as we want to. The 18 is always a cracker. No matter where I go in the world, it's the people that's the people. That's the one people talk about. So I think we have a really good core range now, and probably not going to change that, but probably add a few things to it, which will not be special editions, but will be part of the core range.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, it's It was one of the things that always strikes me about Highland Park as a distillery is that you guys have you're one of the few distilleries that has seemed to have maintained a regular release of like age statements across the spectrum. So it's like some distilleries, obviously, through the shutdown, through the downturn in the 80s, and even a bit of a dip in the early 2000s of that sort of. So they're a bit sort of, some of them are struggling a little bit for stocks now with age, because they ran well under production levels, they ran well under capacity. Whereas some distilleries in Highland Park, Macallan, Glenfarclas really had weathered that really well over time. And that's why you even just mentioned before, like the 25, 40-year-old, I've even seen the 50-year-old at some point a few years back as well, that you're able to release whiskies with substantial age statements on them.
Yeah, if you look back, as you mentioned yourself, from 1983 to 93, there was this kind of lockdown of the whiskey industry and so on, and Highland Park was part of that as well. But we managed to kind of get over it. We launched the 12-year-old in the late 1970s, 1978, and 20 years later, the 18 and 25 came out. So it was not like we had all these age statements out before that. So on the whiskey scene, Highland Park is quite new with a full range, to be honest, compared to many others. But we managed to do well, and today, we're pretty healthy when it comes to stock. And like anyone else, we had a period where there was a lot of non-age statement coming out and so on. And I think, non-age statement has always been there. It will always been there. It'll always be there. But it's something where we look more for an age statement now, and maybe now and again, can we say, have some fun with some non-age statement coming out as a special thing, where we give Gordon Motion, our whiskey maker, completely free hands to design whatever he can. But we are definitely in the position to go back to more age statement for travel retail, for domestic markets, and so on as well. So for the future, much more age statement.
Yeah, right. Very cool. There's some strange questions coming through, and I'm going to attempt to ask them, and you can refuse to answer them. Because I don't know what this one means, I'm going to say, Stuart Mainland says, Martin, big Highland Park fan. For the bar, are you an Opie or a Dooney? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, no, well, what he refers to is the game we play on Orkney, Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Between the Opies, which in the old time the Opies was the farmers and the Dooneys was the fishers. So
consider myself learned. Stuart, Alex, consider myself learned. I've not been to Orkney, so I apologize. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, no, but as I'm not born on Orkney, I'm not an Orcadian, but I work for Highland Park, and that means I'm an Opie.
There, you heard it here. You heard it here. An Opie.
Yeah. So, but if you have to go by the rules and so on, it will refer to, if you're not an Orcadian, born in Orkney and divided in by different regions and so on, which decides you where to be an Opie or Dooney. Put it into very can we say a scale on how you can be an Opie and Dooney. If you fly into Orkney for the first time, you visit Orkney, you will always be an Opie. If you take the ferry, you will always be a Dooney. That's kind of put it into very tight. So I
think I'd enjoy the ferry ride. So I'm going to be a Dooney. You're going to be an Opie. So I'll see you on the field.
Yeah. But I can tell you, it's you have to look it up on YouTube and see a game of bar. It's simply an amazing game, and I think it takes place on Orkney and one or two other places in Scotland which have relationships to Orkney and so on. But it's a game with absolutely no rules. There's no referee or anything. It's just an amazing game, and that's why it's only played 2 times a year, because there's a lot of people getting hurt, so you can't really play it more if people want to have a job as well. So it's fascinating.
Okay. There's a great question that came through from Scott Quinn that I'd like us to touch on. He says, hi, Matt and Martin. I would love to hear Martin's thoughts on seasoned casks. From my understanding, Highland Park are using mainly sherry seasoned casks for their maturation. There is a concern in Australia around the future of fortified casks. So should we be concerned or just embrace the change to seasoned casks in the near future?
Yeah, well, it's a really, really good question. We both at McCarran and Highland Park, we are using sherry seasoned casks. We use bourbon casks as well, but sherry seasoned cask is more to reflect the old style of sherry cask, and the old style of sherry cask was kind of transportation casks. The industry didn't use a lot of casks that were used for actually sherry maturation. They were used, most of the casks they used were casks used for transportation between Spain and Great Britain. And then the whiskey industry later took them over, first for transportation of whiskey, but also for maturation. So the sherry season cask, what we do is to reflect that and leave as much of the flavors behind from the wood as well. And it works for us. And I think, I would say most distilleries in Scotland will use that sherry season kind of thing. Very few will use cask taken out from a Solera system or whatever it can be. It doesn't do anything good, I think. I think the sherry season cask and the charring of the casks, and of course the difference in wood, American oak, European oak, and so on, is where we see the changes of flavors in whiskies.
Yeah, very cool. David Taylor says hi to you both. And there's a few more questions coming through. But I want to ask you a bit more about Highland Park. It's one of the few distilleries in Scotland. I'd say it's one of, I'm going to get my numbers wrong here, but it's one of maybe 12 ish distilleries that still does some element of floor malting.
Yeah.
So the question would be sort of what's the goal behind still using that as a method of malting barley? It's obviously quite a labor intensive process. It's one that most distilleries have done away with for purposes of just buying commercial malts. You see that as an integral part still to Highland Park, even like in 2020, and part of the identity of the spirit still?
Well, first of all, it's something I don't think we will ever stop doing it. As you say, it's labor intensive, but you know, we are used to it. We're not doing it because we have tourists coming up. We do it simply because of the next step, the drying, and we have to use our peat. I think it's about 90 years ago now, we used, for a period of time, we used malt from Bert's Malt in Inverness, and the peat they were using were from Tumintow or St. Fergus. Changed the malt, changed our flavor in a whiskey. We did for a period of time where we sent peat down to Bert's Malt as well. Changed it because, you know, it was not malted the same way. So the whole thing about humidity and the way we do the floor malting, the drying period with our peat makes Highland Park what it is today. And our whiskey manager, Marie Stanton, she's a huge fan of what we're doing here, and is something she really wants to go on with, and it's the identity of Highland Park. So I don't think we will ever change. If we change and we need to look for a different kind of peat source as well, we will change Highland Park flavor forever. So, and cutting peat on Orkney, sending it to the mainland, have it either going through Saladin or drums or whatever it can for the maltings, will change Highland Park. So it's something we like to do. It's something we put an honor in it, and if we could, we'll probably do even more than the 20 to 25% we do ourselves. So it's something we continue doing, definitely.
So there could be an opportunity for the amount of floor malting to increase more than decrease.
If it's possible for us, if we could put more malting floors in, if we could have the people to do it. One thing we need to remember: there's a restriction on how much malt we can cut, or something how much peat we can cut and use as well. It's a big issue in Scotland right now, but it's something I know Marie Stanton works her way around. She's looking at peat fire time and, you know, all these kind of things. How to get the best ppm value with less peat and these kind of things as well. So if it's possible in the future, I'm 100% sure we will increase, at least for a couple of months, a year. We'll increase floor malting. But again, there needs to be an effect. There needs to be it needs to give results.
Yep.
And there needs to be a meaning behind the madness, if you may say so. But we like to do it. The guys at Highland Park puts an honor into doing it, and it is hard work for people that tried it, you know, just for a few minutes up there, and you know, they always look at me and say, "Really? And you do this for 8 hours, day in, day out?" Yeah.
For 20% of the output.
Yeah. So it's quite hard work, but it's definitely something that pays off for us. And we can see it as well, you know. We've done some expressions with a little bit more peated malt in it, you know, like Wildfather, Valknut, and so on as well. In the future, you know, we might do 100% peated malt. We don't know, but
because there is a peated run that happens at Highland Park, and that's how often are peated runs made at Highland Park, like a heavily peated, run, like a peated run at the distillery, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we tend to close down for the normal production. You know, when we look at if you take our core range 12, 18, and so on, it's normally a mix of 20% malted barley from Highland Park and 80% from Simpsons, which is unpeated, and that's the normal mix we do for our core range. But then a few weeks every year we close down for that normal production and only use produce spirit on 100% malted barley from Highland Park, and that means we get up to a ppm of about 38 to 40.
Yep.
We put that into cask in a warehouse and just let it lie there for a period of time until we can use it in in special expressions like Wildfather, or maybe in the future 100% malted.
Yeah. Okay. So just because I know our members watching and tuning in tonight will appreciate sort of digging a bit deeper on this as well. There's actually Highland Park, I noticed, is one of those one of the distilleries in Scotland that actually fills at a much higher rate than others, in terms of like you fill casks at 69.9 rather than the usual industry 63.4 or 63.5, and even which is above where a lot of Australian distilleries are filling now as well. But which is what effect do you think that's having on the spirit over time, and what have you seen change there?
Yeah, well, we used to do 63.4 or 5 as well. But because of our climate on Orkney, it's pretty cold compared to the rest of Scotland. We see a very slow start of the maturation, and it gives us kind of a different maturation time as well. And it's up to Gordon Motion, but he sees the effect of the high strength. First of all, we can have much more space in our warehouse and so on. But when we get casks in at the age of 12, 13 years old and have an alcohol percentage still about 62, 63, they're absolutely fantastic. And it's not just because of the high alcohol. The maturation have been done so well, and we get flavors that are amazing. The colors are great, and so on. So there's no need for us to start at 63.4. The maturation works perfectly at high strength, and I think it's something to do with our cold climate, that it starts very slowly. It's not just bang on, and even in summer we don't have the heat up to 30 degrees. We have a pretty cool climate up there. So it's something, I think, to do with the climate as well. Of course, a huge thing, I think, is the quality of the wood we have. But after 10, 12, 15 years, still really good whiskey, high strength, but absolutely enjoyable, and gained what we wanted from the wood.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're going to just take one last little question here. Then I'll let Martin get back to his day, because it is 11 o'clock. We started at 11 a.m. in Denmark time, and he's probably got a lot of things on today. So, but I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. There was one other question here, which I'm just going to have to scroll back up to. Have you climbed the Old Man of Hoy?
I haven't climbed the Old Man of Hoy. I've been there. I've been very close to it, but I haven't climbed it. I think with my weight and Old Man of Hoy, I will probably break it. So I think it's better to just stand on ground instead of climbing it. But I think it's amazing to see people do it. I've seen it a few times, and it's amazing. And it's again one of these places on Orkney that's worth a visit and absolutely amazing.
Well, I think that might just wrap us up for the night. You know what? It's these opportunities that we get to. It's all right. There's an empty glass. These opportunities that we get to chat with people like yourself, and having these conversations and digging a bit deeper and taking member questions on your history, on Highland Park's history, discovery of their spirit. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to talk to members tonight, our time, this morning, your time, and having a chat about everything. So thank you so much, Martin, again, from myself and from all of the members of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society here. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Matt. Thank you. And hope to see you all soon. Yeah, and I hope to see you back in Australia soon, and I hope to be to Denmark soon. That'd be even better. But you're welcome. You're welcome. Let me know. Thank you so much. And we'll catch up. We'll catch up with you again soon. Thank you so much for having me. Don't go anywhere, Martin. Stay right there. Stay right there. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back again live tomorrow night, of course, which will be with Julian White from Whiskey and Helmet. So do encourage you to tune in again tomorrow night for our nightly live at 7 p.m. Then, of course, Friday night is our massive members Zoom hang. Everyone's welcome into that one. Everyone can come along, pour yourself a dram, have a Friday night drink with me. It'll be a lot of fun. In the meantime, Martin, thank you once again for being a part of this. Thank you, everyone, asking all these great questions. And I will see you all soon. Cheers. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.